Hello, everybody. This is Lisa. Today is January 17th, 2024. We are working on block 3 of the sampler so along with Rita's Brews, Mona Did What, and Rowena. We have selected our block for this coming week, and it is Arkansas Crossroads by Delaware Quilts. The link for the pattern will be in the description portion of this video. This is a very simple block. I hope you enjoy it. I actually like it and will probably make a quilt out of this sometime this year. Now, it does call for 4 fabric choices. We have a background light, medium, and dark, and I have chosen pinks and reds for this block. Now I am using a fabric line from Lori Holt. Your choice is yours. You can make it scrappy. You can use a fabric line. You can use yardage. You can use whatever you have on hand. But before we get started, I do have a question for you because I am an early morning person. As I'm taping, it is 4 a.m. this morning, and this is when I do my best sewing, is in the morning. I'm interested to find out when you sew. When is the best creative time for you? I know that we have busy lives, whether we are working full time, caring for loved ones, caring for children, so many things. So I'm interested in knowing when you quilt, when you create. But let's get started. So I have my 12.5-inch ruler, my rotary cutter, some pins if needed, and of course, we have my pattern that I am going to keep off to the side. And we are going to begin cutting. And I am going to work on my background fabric first, which is this pretty white with the stars, little red stars on it. So I've taken my fabric and I have actually cut on this. So I've taken my fabric. It is nice and flush. I'm going to make sure that I have a straight line to work off of. So I'm just going to take a piece of that off and cut that away. So I have a nice straight line. So for our backgrounds A, we are going to need 2 blocks at 6 and a little bit. Again, I try not to give sizes unless I am cutting it a little larger, and that's because I want to respect the pattern writer and give them credit. So just follow along. This is your background fabric, and on the first page of the instruction, that would be your third cut. So it would be your squares. And so I'm just cutting this off. I'm going to set this aside. And I'm going to make a nice little straight line from there, cutting just a smidgen off to get me a straight working line. Flipping this over. And now I am going to make a square cut on that fabric. Setting that aside. So we have 2 of the background fabrics cut, and that is all that is required for the background fabric. On our light, it is calling for 4 blocks, and I'm just going to fold this over so that I have 4 layers of fabric and I can make just one cut. Now, if you feel more comfortable cutting these out one at a time, you are more than welcome to. Whatever you need to do to get that square cut out. This works a little bit easier for me because it just reduces the steps that I have to take. So we are cutting our light fabric out. Our light fabric on the pattern is the last cutting instruction, and that is going to be my B. So I am going to just make a strip of this. I'm going to set this aside because this is the only cut. Let me straighten this out so I have a nice clean edge and removing any folds in the fabric. And cutting the last fold. So now I have 4 square units of my light fabric. Set that aside for now. Now for our medium and dark fabrics, it is calling for 1 strip. Both of them are going to be the same size, so 1 strip of each fabric. And I am going to layer my fabric down as evenly as possible on top of each other. And because of my working space, I tend to fold my fat quarters just so I have a little bit room. And you can create wherever you're at. You do not need a large space to quilt or to make a top. You work with what you have. If you're at the kitchen table, a small space in the living room, a little area carved out in your bedroom, wherever you can create. You do not need a huge studio. Just so. So I have this lined up. And I am going to get a straight edge. On the instructions, this is the first cutting instruction. I'm going to label the C and D. Turn this over. And I am going to cut my strips. I'm going to get my strip right here. That's it for that. So I'm just going to put my fabric aside. And I am going to make this strip with it folded over. I'm going to cut this to 8 inches with the open, with the folded sides to my left. I'm left-handed, with my folded sides to the left because I do not want to split the strips. So I'm going to cut this to 8 inches, getting it nice and neat. We are going to subcut this, and we've done this in our first block with the carination block. So it's a process that you've already learned, a step that you've already learned. So I have 2 strips, 4 squares in my background, 2 squares. That's all you need. So what we are going to do at this point, following the instructions, I'm going to move this aside for a minute. I am going to take the back of my blocks, and it says that we are going to make a diagonal line from corner to corner on all 4 blocks. So we're going to make that diagonal line on all 4 blocks. And we are going to pull the light fabric out. Excuse me. Grab my pattern here. So what we're going to do is we are going to take the light fabric on the background fabric and place it right at the top left-hand corner. If it helps to put a pin in it to keep it in place, you can do that. And since I'm here and the block is big enough, I am going to just pin my blocks all the way down. Now, if you're comfortable with it, just picking it up and taking it to the sewing machine without pinning, that is fine. But this is what we're going to do. We are going to sew right on top of that line that we drew, that diagonal line. We are going to sew right there. So we're just going to go to the sewing machine. And go ahead and sew it in. Our fabrics are facing each other, right sides facing each other. I am changing things just to get it done a little quicker. One more. That one. Alrighty, let me remove those pins and cut this off. I'm going to cut this apart. I do want to check to make sure that I have proper coverage from end to end, and I do. Okay. If it if it does not cover it properly, then you can go ahead and get your seam ripper out, or what is affectionately known as jack. You can go ahead and gently undo those seams. But if everything looks good, we are going to cut a 1/4 inch away from that sew line, going away from the fabric. So just cutting that now. You can also do this with a pair of scissors, but because I have the rotary cutter out, I am just going to use that. All right, so we have this unit completed. I'm going to set this aside for now, and we are going to work on our strips. So we have our strips. We are going to flip it right sides facing each other, and we are going to sew a 1/4 of an inch down the side of the strip. And I am pinning because this is a beginner tutorial. Just makes it easier. And again, if you are comfortable without pinning, that's fine. But we are going to go to the sewing machine and take care of that. All right, so we have our strip set sewn together. We have our blocks sewn together. What we're going to do at this point is we are going to take it to our ironing station and give it a nice press, pressing towards the dark. And I will see you in a All right, so I have pressed out my blocks and I squared it up, which just means that you are going to place your ruler on top of the block to get the size you need to quote. And one of the things I noticed was on one of my blocks, I was just a smidgen short of that block size. But I'm going to leave it like that, and we are going to work it in. It's just a hairline that is short, and when we take that 1/4 inch seam, it will work out. But I did want to show you that A lot of times when we cut these blocks, it does not matter how careful we are, little things happen. The little things happen. So now we are going to subcut our strip blocks, and that information is the second step on page 2 of the subcut units. So I'm going to get a good working line. We did cut these strips just a little bit bigger to give us some playroom. We are going to need 4 subcut units. And I am going to cut that. Our third and our final cut. And we have just a little bit left over that I will put in my scrap bin. Alrighty then. So now that we have our blocks unit, our strip unit subcut into 4 equal units, we are going to pair them up. We are going to, and let me double check. We are going to put a dark up to the top left and a dark towards the bottom right. So it will look like that. We're going to repeat that step on the second unit, and we are just going to sew these down, making sure that our seams are nicely nested to each other. We'll pop a pin in both of them. Can you believe it? We are very close to being completed with this block. Pop a pin. And we are going to take 1/4 of an inch seam down, keeping everything as straight as possible. See it in the machine. All right, so when we have our blocks completed or sewn together, we have 2 units that look like this. We are going to go ahead and give it a nice press and get those seams to lie flat, and I'll be right. And we are back. Now we have 2 units, our 2 blocks are completed. We are going to assemble our units together to complete this block. And this portion is very simple. With your red facing the top left corner, we are going to put the square with our background fabric with the top triangle portion on the top left hand side. I'm looking at this upside down. So, okay. Then we are going to place our 4-patch unit where the red or your dark fabric is at a diagonal. And we are going to place our other background fabric where the background fabric is touching. And it is going to look like this. We are going to fold this over. Again, folding it over, and there are no seams to nest at this part. I'm just going to pop a pin in it. I'll pop a pin in it, and because I was doing it backwards, I'm just going to give it a nice check to make sure everything is facing the way I want before going to the sewing machine. All right, so let's go. Okay, I did not cut my last piece of thread off when I made my unit. I'm going to cut it off now because I think I did it. When I sewed it backwards. So now I have my units that look like this. I'm just going to finger press right there at that corner or that seam to get that seam to lie flat. Taking your block, I'm going to flip it over, find the middle, put a pin in the middle to nest the only seam that we will need to nest, and take it to the sewing machine, making our 1/4 inch stitch. And so there we have it. This is our Arkansas Crossroads block. We're going to go ahead, take a nice press on this block, and I will see you right. Okay, so here we have it. We have our Arkansas Crossroads block. I do need to go ahead and square it up to the 12 and a half inch unfinished block that will finish at 12 inches once we've put all the blocks together. Once we've sewn all the blocks together into the quilt top. But I'm going to hold off on that for now. I will not square up my blocks until I'm ready to assemble all my blocks together. That way I can eliminate a lot of the fraying that happens with some fabric. It's natural. It's just part of the fabric making process. But I did want to show you really quickly before I end this. It's sometimes we think, well, that block looks a little plain. But can you imagine making this block in either scrappy colors or the same three fabrics or four fabrics that we use? And when you start placing blocks together, you start to see secondary patterns. And I actually like this block. And I think I may make a quilt utilizing this block with a whole bunch of pinks, a whole bunch of purples, because I have a little girl that I think would enjoy it. I may post it once I've completed it, just so to share it with you, but just something to think about. I'm glad you've been able to join me on this video, and I look forward to seeing you on Monday at Mona's. Leave a comment or a question, and I will be certain to answer it for you. Until then, you all be blessed, be kind, and keep sewing. See you next time.